The Democratic Party needs to be labeled as a terrorist organization, and it needs to be removed from every fucking ballot in this country and replaced with a new party. Anybody who supports the Democratic Party needs to be labeled as a terrorist and or put on a watch list. The time for talking is over. We need to organize against the Democrats and the liberals, and we need to start taking action. We have tried working with you. We have tried seeing things from your perspective, but we cannot coexist anymore. There is no more trying to get along with you. We need to start figuring out a way how to organize off this app and in person. I've seen lots of Democrats and liberals cheering for this, and I've seen lots of liberals and Democrats asking, where is our humanity? Our humanity and our civility die. The Democratic...
No. Mine is definitely still here. Now, no, we don't want to become what we're fighting against. So we're just going to pause right there. That clip, that's just what happens when frustration turns into exaggeration. You know, you can hear it in the emotion. But you can also hit a jump because once you start throwing everything in one bucket, history, protests, movements, you're not explaining anything anymore. You're just venting. There's the part nobody, wants to hear. When people feel like they're not being heard, they don't get quieter. They get louder, sharper, and reckless sometimes. Now, I understand the frustration, obviously, but y'all know what I'm pushing against. So, don't miss the setup because that energy didn't come from nowhere, though. Now, I want you to watch what happens when you leave social media and go into the actual streets. Now, I want to warn y'all not going to see me for a little while. I'll probably chime in somewhere midway through, but this is about almost 8 minutes. So go and get your popcorn.
You know what I'm saying? So that's basically my opinion, personally.
Let me ask you guys one more question. Whoever wants to answer. If it was, say it wasn't Trump, say it was J.D. Vance, say it was another Republican, would you be on board with the Conservative Party as much as you are Trump? Is it more about just picking a different party, or is it all in on Trump?
As long as their policies aren't the same as, what we've been dealing with. As long as there's some type of change,
So it's more about the change.
Right. And he's the one speaking of those changes, okay. So obviously.
Yeah. Basically being conservative, like you said.
And the qualifications for being a leader is you have to have leader qualities. You can't be someone that can't lead to be a leader. So it goes based on who has these qualities to not be pushed over or not get taken advantage of. And that's what it comes down to. Yeah. Who's going to do that? And right now we got, the answer is Donald Trump. And Vance is going to be, it's Vance 2028. That's how they're going to follow it up. He's going to win. He's going to be our next president, 48th president. So that's just how it's going to carry over. We may see a switch from a blue Democratic Philly in the next 10 years to a red. Who knows? All the Democratic cities are Philly, Chicago, LA, DC,
New York.
What's their condition? All the ones that's up. They got all these shootings, all this. They can't. You can steal over as long as it's not over $1,000. Like they got all this craziness. I went in the Wawa the other day. There's nothing in there. You don't even have to pay. I was like, we're the only people paying. There's nothing in the store.
You felt like you was doing something wrong for paying.
I'm from California. I know about that.
Yeah, I'm like, I've never been somewhere where like people steal so much. I'm like, am I doing something wrong for paying?
I know. I'm actually paying.
Deodorant, you gotta get it out the cage.
Oh man.
I know. Deodorant.
Yeah.
I am voting for Donald Trump for the second time. This is so interesting. The first time I voted for Donald Trump, I was a police officer here in Philadelphia. I worked the riots. Yes, we were so incredibly disappointed. We couldn't believe it when things didn't go as expected. But we have hope, of course. So I am putting all of my hope on Donald Trump. Trump, baby drill, baby drill. He is what we need in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is Trump country. There's absolutely not a doubt in my mind about that, and I'll tell you why. America needs to get back on track on the road to prosperity. This is what we need. We need prosperity in our country. We need order at the border. We need a lack of, we need to invest in a lack of transparency in our children's education. I am a public school educator in Chester City, and I see it all of the time, and it's something that definitely has to stop. The Department of Education is growing too large. So what we need parents more involved in their children's education. We need them to know what's being taught in the classroom. We need to know what books are offered in the classroom. You agree? Yes, this is what we need. We need order at the border. And people say to me, Alfie, that's racist. No, it's not. Okay? What is a country without a border?
You're giving trillions of dollars to a bunch of a country around the world that we don't even know the war's about. Most of us don't even know the difference. We try to say Palestine, Israel. Most people don't really know. We got to keep talking about it over and over again. But yeah, $750 to people in North Carolina.
That's where we're from, North Carolina.
Come on.
That was
$750. He is the only white man in America to stand on a platform and say, black people, we owe you. Period. That's where my common sense started from. He attempted to make sure he was a man of his word. It was blocked. I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm not doing this because I hate this side or that side. I'm starting from that common sense that this man said, only white man in America to stand up and say we owe.
As I said, trust me, I used to be a cop.
Now, isn't it unfortunate how thinking for yourself, having actual, data to back up how you feel and why you chose to vote the way that you wanted to vote, all that be reduced to something like white supremacy. This is clearly debunking the narrative 100%. Now, I just wanted to chime in a little bit just to let y'all know I was here and I was watching. However, I do want to add to what he was saying. Donald Trump has done an incredible amount of work towards the black communities. You're talking about permanent funding for HBCUs, opportunity zones. I mean, unemployment. Come on. So much. You freed so many, granted pardons to so many individuals whom were wrongfully or rightfully convicted, but the time left may have been a little bit too long. Now, I'm going to go ahead and shut up and get back to it, but I wanted to come in and say I'm alive.
White man in America to stand up and say we owe.
As I said, trust me, I used to be a cop in Philly. I know, okay? I've seen the car accidents with those who are here in the country illegally, driving with no driver's license, and they're injured. Then what? They go to the hospital, they have no money, they have no health. It's not okay. It is not okay to permit people to come into a country and place them in a permanent underclass where they have no hope. They will never, ever, ever see the American dream because it simply is not in their reach because the resources are not here. It's not okay. So that is the reason Americans need to put their foot down and say no.
So I'm not saying you got to be dedicated to anything. Let's use common sense. So if you're not completely a Republican or a Democrat, but let's think for a second. The Democrats right now are saying boys should be girls. Common sense. That's just stupid. They said Trump got a 2025 plan. Hold it. Did y'all meet the man? This man, if it was his plan, he would not let somebody else claim his plan. So if somebody got an agenda out there, like everybody needs to have an agenda, and some things may be in line, but that's not his plan. Do we have some things to be concerned with Mr. Trump about? Yes, we do. January the 6th people shouldn't even be discussed anymore. They should stay in jail. That was wrong. Cops having 100% immunity, that's just crazy. That's scary. The immigration issue is an issue because the immigration issue got to be bigger because they came in as immigrants to go into black and minority communities to weaken that base. It just got out of hand and now it's flowing to everything else. But now what they did, common sense, you're giving a bunch of people money, and thank you Chicago, shout out to Chicago, y'all actually did a good job of waking the country up when y'all cursed and said enough's enough and said, darn it, this is crazy.
There's no prosecution of crime in this area. That's why people leave. That's why people are fed up. And there was a dirt bike chase on this street just last Sunday night. There was a helicopter and about 30 cops chasing a guy on a dirt bike around there. It wasn't on the news. They don't put that on the news.
No, because you keep hearing that the Philadelphia suburbs are turning more blue.
And I completely agree with that. I have family Doylestown, I have family in Norristown, I have family in Souderton. And that was true 8 years ago. That was true at the initial Obama, and there was a transition of people thinking that there's time for a change, and then the change happened. But now, in retrospect, people are looking back and say, "Okay, wait, maybe not so. Maybe there was something that I felt guilty about that made me make the decision, but there are people now who are coming back and saying, okay, I have a family, I have a life, and voting Republican is best for the majority of the people who I know.
Mm-hmm. Would you say 50-50? This is like the most swingiest of all the states, swingiest. Do you think that that's off? Do you believe that the polls are correct?
So 50-50 majority vote, yes, because if you look at like inner city Philadelphia, and if you look at Pittsburgh, and if you look at there may be another county that I'm not sure, like way up of northwest, there's a lot of people in those areas. But when you start looking at the individual counties and you just count the counties, the majority of the counties are Republican.
Right.
Man, that's not a think tank. These aren't, pundits right here. These are regular people, regular Americans, in one of the most historically blue cities in the country, talking like, hey, yo, something isn't adding up. So obviously, this clip is dated. However, it aged incredibly well. This is in Philadelphia, by the way. And notice what they're not saying, right? They're not quoting policy papers. They're not debating hashtags. They're talking about not feeling safe. They're talking about schools slipping, systems not doing what they're supposed to do, what they were told to do. They would do, rather. It's not ideology, man. That's right. That right there is just daily life. And here's where it gets uncomfortable for the Democrats, man. When voters start describing reality in simple terms, all the polished messaging in the world can't override it. You can reframe statistics, you can rename policies, you can hold your little press conferences, but you can't convince a parent their neighborhood feels safe if they walk out every single day and they don't believe it is. And once that disconnect sets in, something else starts happening. Even people who aren't supposed to say it start saying it.
People keep sending me, they say, your buddy, Stephen A., says that there's no hope for the Democrats. And that when you look at them now, you believe that they just can't find their way. Why? When there's nothing but opportunity in front of them to pick up the mantle that MAGA was supposed to be about, which is fix America first. And to take that opportunity, because obviously the administration can't promise to change something that it's responsible for creating.
First of all, let me say a couple of things. Number one, I would tell them where they can kiss, but I'm in a good mood. I won't do that. Instead, what I will say is I really would appreciate if they watched Chris Cuomo more when I was on, because they would know that I've been on their case for a long damn time. They just want to ignore what they want to ignore, because that's what the Democratic Party does. See, the one thing you have to give the GOP credit for is that its constituents, its voters say, no, we want that. Yeah, you got DeSantis or Ramaswamy or Nikki Haley, somebody. Hell with y'all. We want him. Whereas the Democratic Party religiously are picking candidates for you and telling you as a Democratic constituent who you should be supporting. That's their damn problem, okay? We know that in New York City, because I'm going to say it. You can't say it, but I'm going to say it. Your brother should be the mayor of New York City. He should be the governor of New York State. Don't get me started with all of that stuff. But that's a different subject for another day. In the end, my position has been consistent. It's not about sitting up there and saying the Democratic Party doesn't have a chance. It's saying replicating your behavior pre-election and allowing that to continue while being rudderless and leaderless is not going to get you anywhere. Because no matter how much you complain about Trump, here's the bottom line. Unless he's successful in circumventing the 22nd Amendment of the Constitution and running for a third term, he's not running in 2028. He's already made over a few $1 billion since he's been in office, his first 16 months of his second term. Chances are he's going to continue to pad his wallet and that of his family for years to come. And then he'll walk away with multi-billions in his pocket, directly or indirectly. And somebody like a Marco Rubio would be running for the presidency, not him. And that's who you're going to have to deal with if you're the Democratic Party. Who is your damn leader? We've been here on the air 2 years. I've had the pleasure of being on this show with you. You call me every week. I love you for it. I've been saying this for the longest time. It's 2 years later. Who the hell's the leader? I'm still waiting. You still waiting. Who's the person? It's Gavin Newsom? Is it? You sure? Is it Kamala Harris, who now sits up there after writing a book insulting some of the primary Democratic candidates that could potentially run for office, insulting them, talking about how they weren't there for her, et cetera, et cetera. Now she's talking about maybe. Once again, it's a maybe. Once again, it's nothing definitive. Same thing you go on the View. Is there anything that you would have done differently than President Biden? I can't think of anything. Really? You can't think of anything? The whole time you were in office for 4 years, you can't think of anything that you would have done differently. You seemed unsure then. You're talking about running again. You seem unsure now. I'm sitting here telling you, look, this is what it's going to take to win. I don't want you to lose. If the Republicans got the House, the Senate, and the White House, I want the Democrat to have at least one, if not both houses of Congress, because I like folks having to cross the aisle and negotiate with one another. And because I say that, they're going to misquote me, misrepresent what I'm saying, not highlight the fact that I'm telling you you're losing. And I'm trying to help you win, and you just won't listen. That's the Democratic Party. And if they don't step
that right there, we know that he's not publicly a conservative. That's Stephen A. Smith, saying plainly that a party lost a direction completely. And listen to what he actually pointed at. Leadership, not opponents, leadership. Because his was quietly happening. For years, the pitch was vote against the other side. I remember always hearing that. But eventually, come on now. People started asking, okay, but what are we voting for? And if that answer isn't clear, if it feels like decisions are being made for voters instead of by them, you start losing people you assumed were locked in. Gone, finito, poof. And that's why this clip matters. Because when criticism starts coming from inside the house, you can't just label that away. No. Now, I want you to watch what happens when the same tension shows up when the conversation turns to the economy.
There's plenty of disagreement whether Wall Street and Main Street are always aligned, but at least we know that the corporate profitability and the economy and profit margins are reflected in what happens in the averages. So, in other words, if we're facing a recession, it's unlikely for the stock market to be doing well. We can look at the bond market as well. So I just wanted to show you a couple of charts. One is the S&P, one is the NASDAQ. We're back to all-time highs, basically, on most of the averages. You can see that when the tariffs were enacted, that's in the middle of the chart. There was a sell-off, quick rebound, and the same sort of situation happening now. Same with the NASDAQ. And then also, I just want to show you quickly the 10-year note or interest rates. Go back for the same period of time, and inflation is not where the Fed wants it. It's not where anyone wants it. But you would normally see, if there was a true crisis, you would normally see some type of panic or angst in the bond market. So just in terms of Wall Street, you would not know things are going very poorly the way that you describe it. Things are going pretty well.
Well, actually, I talk to corporate leaders all the time, and they're incredibly concerned with the instability and the uncertainty that Donald Trump and Republican policies have created. Because as you know, Joe, it's impossible to make sound investment decisions when you have such an uncertain, unstable public policy environment, which Donald Trump has continued to put forward in terms of the way in which he's conducted himself. And so that's highly problematic. And the reality is, at the end of the day, for the American people that we all are privileged to represent here in Congress, that, for the investing class under Donald Trump's policies, including his one big ugly bill, which enacted the largest cut to Medicaid in American history at the same time that these my colleagues, provided massive tax breaks to their billionaire donors, the investor class is doing well. The problem is the working class is not. And Donald Trump promised to focus on making life more affordable for working class Americans. And in that regard, all evidence indicates he has failed.
Now, this is where things get surgical. You got Joe Kernan laying out the numbers and Hakeem Jeffries trying to shift the conversation to how people feel about the numbers. Man, you got one side saying, look at the market. things aren't collapsing. The other side saying people aren't feeling that, they ain't feeling like that. Here's the problem. If your message relies on people feeling worse than that data actually suggests, but their personal situation isn't matching the story, you lose credibility. And if your opponent can point out the numbers that contradict your warnings, you start looking like you're reaching. That's why that exchange hits harder than it looks. It's not just about stocks and bonds. It's about trust. So step back and look at what you just watched. A frustrated voice online. Real people, when he was, talking crazy too. Real people in a major city. A mainstream personality, Stephen A. Smith, calling out direction. And then you got a live TV moment where the message gets tested. Different rooms, same tension. At some point, this stops being about left versus right and starts being about whether what people are being told lines up with what they're actually living. And when that gap is too wide, people don't argue about it. They just move. So if you made it to the end of this video, I just want you to comment the words, say less. That way I know you made it to the end, man. You know what I'm saying? Watch it all the way through. YouTube be acting like people don't be watching my video all the way through. You know what I'm saying? So I be over here like, You know what I'm saying? But y'all be safe. Go check out somebody today. You can quite literally be saving their life. Peace.